Good day and welcome back to IndustryBroadcast.com's audio article number 58, parts A and B. Today's audio article is written by Troy Gilbert, who is the co-founder of Mockingbird Games, makers of the game-making game. Troy's been working in the games industry since 2001 as a technology architect and game designer. He is also involved in the indie game scene and is a writer and lecturer on the subject of lone wolf game development. He has served as an independent games festival judge for several years now, and currently sits on the visual engineering panel for the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. Mockingbird, the game-making game, can be found at playmockingbird.com, and of course we recommend that you check out Troy's blog at www.TroyGilbert.com. Audio article number 58. Written by Troy Gilbert and read aloud by Ryan Wienko on the 12th of January, 2009. Part A. Deconstructing The Legend of Zelda. It's no secret that The Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo Entertainment System was a watershed game. The game still has an open-world feel that titles to this day fall on their face trying to emulate, even in this post-GTA design world. This was the first game I ever played that truly was open in the sense that I can go anywhere in the game and basically approach or avoid any obstacle I saw fit. The game also fits the bill as the prototypical example of an action-adventure video game, and the series, with a few minor exceptions, has continued that tradition ever since. What is there to learn from a game that originally was released in 1986? Over 20 years later, there are still design subtleties in The Legend of Zelda that are overlooked. The game is a perfect example of simple mechanics played out on a vast and varied playing field. From a complexity perspective, the game represents something achievable by any single individual given today's technology and tools, yet we have the efforts of huge teams with comparatively bottomless budgets failing to capture the subtle qualities that simply make this game work. In what I hope to be an insightful series of essays, I will be deconstructing the elements that I feel make Legend of Zelda a relative Citizen Kane of the genre, and see how those successes can translate into useful lessons in today's games. As a bit of a preface, let's look at the game's premise and detail the overall mechanics of Legend of Zelda. The premise follows the classic hero's journey with Link, the player-controlled character, who is so named because Miyamoto saw him as the player's link into the game world, out to save the princess Zelda from the evil clutches of Ganon. To achieve this goal, Link must acquire the objects of mythical power, being the Triforce, and the one weapon that can kill the ultimate evil, the Master Sword. To this end, Link travels to many different locales, deserts, forests, mountains, and dungeons, doing battle with many monsters, and finding many unique weapons. The mechanics are straightforward. Link is represented on screen in a top-down view. The player has direct control over Link. The directions on the gamepad, left, right, up, and down, correspond to movements on screen, west, east, north, south, respectively. The A and B buttons are mapped to various actions, usually one of which is mapped to Link's sword, while the other is mapped to a special weapon or inventory item. There's no jumping, and to pick up an item, Link simply collides with it. The game world is divided into two sections, the overworld and the underworld. The overworld is composed of mountains, trees, bushes, rivers, lakes, rocks, etc., what you'd expect from a classic outdoor adventure landscape. The underworld is represented by dungeons, whose entrances are hidden throughout the overworld. Each dungeon, of which there are 9 in total, is self-contained with one entrance and one exit, each one containing a boss monster and usually an item of significance near their end. The dungeons don't have to be visited in any particular order, but some of them have accessibility barriers that require attaining items of significance from other dungeons in order to be successful. The final dungeon is home to Ganon, whose defeat is the final goal of the game. The game world is viewed one screenful at a time. When Link hits the edge of the screen, or a doorway on the edge of the screen when in dungeons, the game pauses momentarily while the view shifts or slides to the new screen, at which point the player control resumes. Each screen is usually transient, with enemies regenerating and other elements resetting when the player exits and then returns to a screen. Enemies cannot pursue Link out of one screen and into another, nor can Link attack from one screen into another. Thus, each screen represents a self-contained segment of gameplay, rarely dependent on what came before it. Enemies are generally very stupid, and normally just follow set movement patterns. Outside of bosses, few of the enemies actually pursue the player, and most are killed in 1 or 2 hits from the player's sword. Most enemies attack the player with contact damage, though some launch projectiles along whatever direction they are facing. Often enemies leave behind some kind of reward on their death, usually a coin or rupee, a heart, representation of Link's life or hit points, or other refillable items, arrows, bombs, keys, etc. Of course, all of this is probably not news to anyone listening, as I would hope everyone is familiar with this classic. It can be easily located in ROM form to play in your favorite NES emulator, or you can grab the version for the Game Boy Advance, the re-release NES Classic. I have both, in fact. Audio article number 58, Part B. Movement Mechanics in The Legend of Zelda. Let's start our deconstruction with the most basic feature of the player's character, Link, that being his movement. Link's movement displays a surprisingly amount of subtlety. If you play The Legend of Zelda for a while, you'll notice that Link doesn't ever get hung up on obstacles due to unexpected collisions, nor do you ever just miss a bad guy by a pixel or two when attacking him. Yet at the same time, you'll notice that Link moves fluidly through the game world. Even though the environment is tile-based, you can tap the directional pad and Link will move a single pixel in that direction. If you're moving to the left and decide to go up, down, or right, Link instantly moves in that other direction when you change directions on the gamepad. What's happening here is a very neat trick. While Link can move a single pixel at a time in any direction, the longer he continuously moves in any direction, the more he gravitates towards aligning himself with the underlying grid on the screen. The tile grid for The Legend of Zelda is 16 tiles wide by 14 tiles high, including 3 tiles for the status display at the top of the screen. Each tile is 16 by 16 pixels. Link operates on half-tile grids, though 32 by 28 tiles or 8 by 8 pixels each. As Link moves, if he's not currently aligned with the half-tile grid, he is adjusted 1 pixel at a time towards the closest correction. As a result, if Link is 4 pixels off alignment, he'll line back up with the grid after moving 4 pixels. In case that description doesn't make any sense to you, here's an exercise to help demonstrate the technique. Assume Link is basically in the center of the screen, lined up with the tile. In other words, Link occupies a whole tile, just as he would in a strictly tile-based game, like a traditional board game or war game. If you tap on the directional pad to the left, Link will move 1 pixel to the left. If you tap it again, he'll move another pixel to the left. This is pixel fine control, which makes Link's movement feel very fluid. Now if you hold the directional pad to the left, Link will move continuously. As soon as you let up, he stops. If you hold left and then immediately reverse to hold right, he instantly changes direction, as he does for up and down as well. This is basically lag-free, which means Link's movements feel responsive. Okay, now return back to Link sitting squarely on a tile. If you tap left twice, he'll be 2 pixels over from where he started from. Now press up 4 times. You'll notice that after each press, Link will move up 1 pixel, but he'll also move to the right 1 pixel, either the first 2 times you pressed up or the first and the third time you pressed up. So even though you are never pressing right on the gamepad, Link has now returned to the same horizontal position he was when he started, before you moved him 2 pixels to the left. This is built-in correction. But what does this correction do for you? The correction prevents the subtle but annoying problem wherein the player would snag on the corners of objects that he anticipated passing by. The more the player moves continuously, the more aligned Link becomes, which has the same effect as speed-sensitive steering in a car. The correction also has benefits for attacking as well. When Link attacks, with his sword for example, the kill zone lies in the tile immediately along his facing direction. Since enemies align along a similar half-grid as Link, the correction serves up to align Link with his enemies, as opposed to missing the enemy by a few frustrating pixels. Observant listeners will observe that this feature doesn't appear in the Super Nintendo sequel, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Even though the game world is still tile-based, player and enemy or NPC movements is not strictly aligned on any grid. We get the same corrections though, but using different mechanisms. Movement is corrected by rounding the corners of most things Link can collide with. Thus, when he encounters them, the physics of the game deflects him at a 45-degree angle along his direction of movement. For example, if he was moving up or north and encountered a corner, he would move northwest or east until he passed the corner. Attacking is corrected in a similar, interesting way. Instead of Link's sword having a kill zone along a straight line down his facing direction, his sword swipes in a large arc, an arc that happens to be pretty close to 2 full tiles in the game world, one directly in front and half above and half below. This allows the player to attack while slightly misaligned with an enemy and still land a blow. The result for both actions in both games is the same. The player's desire is successfully expressed in the game world, regardless of the potentially pedantic ways of the computer. This concludes audio article number 58, parts A and B, once again written by Troy Gilbert. We absolutely recommend that you check out Troy's product, Mockingbird, the game-making game, at playmockingbird.com, and of course head over to Troy's blog at TroyGilbert.com. As always, this audio article has been brought to you by IndustryBroadcast.com, and we recommend that you check back with the site frequently as we do our very best to update on a regular basis, bringing the collective insight